I didn't care if I lived in a box on the street corner. I just really wanted to get out of the situation that I was in. What's up YouTube? I'm Charmaine Jamil and welcome back to this week's video. So you probably clicked on this video because you saw that 63,000 something odd dollar profit that I made. And I'm gonna get into that, but I really did want to share my 5 life lessons that I've learned and how I'm using these life lessons to really ensure that my next 40 years that I live are not like my last 40 years. So essentially I'm in that kind of space where I got up one morning about 2-3 years ago, decided that I wanted to really step out there and become a YouTuber. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And I'm really grateful that I even have the courage to really make a U-turn and really set my life up to try to accomplish something, or at least go after something that seems not very tangible, but I see other people being successful at it. And I'm like, well, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. So I really wanted to share these 5 tips with you so you could do the same. If she can do it, I can do it. So my first life lesson that I really wanted to share that really has changed my perspective on life is that your time and your health are 2 things that you have the most control over, and do not let anyone negatively intrude on either of them. So if you've been following me, you know this is my 5-week post-surgery because I had my second myomectomy 5 weeks ago and I feel amazing. Now, the funny thing is, when certain people learn that I was having a second myomectomy, they kind of question like, well, if the first one didn't get all of the fibroids, why are you going through this whole surgery again to have these next ones removed? And my answer was simple, because it's my health and that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that I am using every resource that I have to make sure that I am living at my optimal health. The thing about it is, when I had my first surgery, I'm not really quite sure if I had 12 fibroids, but I knew I had 4 that were pretty huge. And the doctor told me, I can get the ones that we can see unless, you know, you're fully cut, because I only had a myomectomy where they just did the incisions. We are not going to be able to get all of the fibroids. And I said, okay, because I knew I wanted those first 4 removed. And I had them removed, and it was one of the best things that I had done. But I also could tell that there were some left over. And yes, I waited up until this point to have the next few removed. And honestly, the first experience wasn't all that great for me, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And I think too, I was basing this experience off of what my first experience was. And I really had to step back and say, well, Charmaine, if you want the fibroids removed, you cannot expect the same experience. You have a baseline for what it could be, but it could be totally different. And I'm so glad that I listened to myself. I listened to my 5 life lessons, because this time it ended up being one of the best things, because as you can see, I'm out moving and shaking and doing 5 weeks post-op. So I say all of that to say is that if you have the resources, if you have the support, if you have the help, and it is something that is dealing with your health, make sure you take care of it so that you can live the highest quality of life that you possibly can. The next life lesson that has really been life-changing for me has for me to really understand what it means to become all of the financial adjectives: literate, savvy, and secure. So in 2009, I purchased my first home when I was 22 years old, and the home was like $101,000 in purchase price. But at that time, the economy wasn't great. They were practically giving away homes, and they had a lot of first-time home buyer incentives. And I really did have a lot of negativity at that time coming at me, because I was living with a family member and it really just wasn't a great situation. As a matter of fact, I will pop in a video here that kind of gives you a little backstory, just in case you want to see it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But anyways, I didn't care if I lived in a box on the street corner. I just really wanted to get out of the situation that I was in. And so essentially what ended up happening when I purchased the home, I kind of got got a lot of flack, like, this little small starter home, you know, this ain't nothing. You know, it was kind of one of those things, like, I like your little house. You know how people try to kind of devalue what you're doing by adding that little in front? But I didn't care. They could have said it was a whorehouse and I would have been like, well, it's mine. But anyways, good thing about it is that little house that I got made fun of for purchasing at 22 years old, well, of course, things changed. The market changed. So in 2022, that same little house went on the market for $153,000. And I kept thinking to myself, who in the heck is paying $153,000 for this home? But I just really wasn't aware or in the know. I really just wanted to sell the home because I moved to Atlanta. I knew that I didn't want to necessarily go down the route of being a landlord because I did try that for quite some time. And I've had both experiences. One where I've had some really great renters who took care of the house as if it was their own home. And then I've had some other ones where the man was trying to fight me in the street. And I was just like, call the police because I'm not dealing with this. But anyways, I put the home on the market on May 1st, and by May 22nd of that year, I was driving back to Atlanta with a $63,000 check sitting on my driver's seat. But during that ride, I kept thinking to myself, well, what are you going to do with this money? Well, this is either a moment that can really change the trajectory of your life, or you can go out and, you know, ball like I'm rich, bitch, right? And I knew I didn't want to necessarily do that. And so I really took the time to set the money aside because I was like, if you don't know what to do with this money, put it in a CD, let it collect some stuff, you know, let it collect some interest until you figure out what does it mean for you to be savvy, secure, and literate financially. I had already had a plan of making sure that I had life insurance because I had a friend at the time who was an insurance agent, and that's basically what she kind of schooled me on. So making sure if I wasn't really setting money aside for a savings, that I had like a return on life premium insurance policy on myself, which I still have. I ended up getting that policy when I was like 29. So by the time I turned 60, right? So by the time I turn 60, if I'm still living, then that $100,000 comes back to me. So I really understood those things like that, like life insurance, those type of things, making sure I had insurance on my parents just in case something happened to them and then I become the beneficiary of those particular policies. But it was a lot different than having this check in my hand where I could invest and, you know, either flip it or I could invest and then I could be back at zero again. And so I really understood at the time, or having that type of boost in my financial situation really could make or break me. And so I really wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing by that $63,000. And that's what I did. I ended up putting it in a CD until I could figure out, okay, what does it mean for me to be financially savvy? I started reading books about how to invest in the stock. I started looking at videos. You know, that's the thing about it. There's YouTube, there's TikTok, there's so many social media, online universities for you to learn something and then fact check it for yourself. So understanding that life lesson has really been able to take stress off of me. So when I wanted to have my surgery and, you know, it was at the top of the year and they said, hey, you haven't really met your deductible yet. And it's like, okay, that's no problem. I want to make sure that I'm healthy, that I can use my time how I want to use it, and that I have the resources to pay for that. That leads me into number 3. What I've really learned is making sure that I am very keen on knowing when to transition in every facet of life. So like I shared a little bit earlier, I got up one morning and I was just like, you know what? I want to do something different because I have the time to do something different. I have the resources to do something different. A lot of people would have been like, no, you need to stay put. Like, who's trying to build a social media presence when it's so saturated at the time? But you have to be very confident and know when transition is right for you. One question I always ask myself to know when transition is correct for me is, what are my options? If you can sit down and know what your options are at the time, then figure that out. I knew at the time for my options, I worked from home, so I had the ability to really understand what it meant to have a presence on social media, but also making sure that I was doing the work that I needed to do as far as working from home. So these first 3 life lessons really helped me build a treasure chest of what it looks like for my health, my finances, as well as when do I know to transition? What are my options? What does success look like for me for my next 40? Now, the last 2 really kind of deal with where I am presently, meaning I have figured out that I don't have to know someone in order for them to mentor me. There are so many YouTubers that I absolutely love them, and I started following them when they merely had 5,000 subscribers, which to me is a lot because I only have about 2,000 at this moment. But essentially, it's something that they kept doing. They kept figuring out, well, what does my social media presence look like? What does YouTube look like for me? And I just kind of study what they're doing, what they're talking about. Aside from enjoying their videos, like some of my favorite content creators, Janae Naylor, Kyra Amanique, I have followed them for a long period of time and can see the transition and the trajectory and really seeing where they made a decision to know when to transition, know when to move on, because you never know what's on the other side of when you move on and how it can benefit you and change your entire life, because technically that's what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for life-changing moments, which really leads me to my last life-changing lesson. You really have to step outside of your dreams to live them. So I'm one of those people, when I get excited about something, I really love to share it. And I'm not sharing it to boast or brag. I'm not sharing it, but I think at the time I was a person that needed validation. I needed someone to say, oh wow, that's so good. You know, that's really gonna work out for you, instead of just basically saying that to myself. And so when I would share like 2 years ago that I was gonna become this YouTuber, and of course I didn't get the response from certain people that I really wanted their support, it kind of hurt my feelings. But then I had to think, I said, Charmaine, you're grown as hell. What are you doing? Do what you want to do. You have the opportunity. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. And essentially what I did is I just kind of locked in and I said, if it's really now or never, if you want to become a YouTuber, you either become it now or you're never going to become it. And that's what I did. I had to step outside of looking for some validation for someone. If I had to really think about it, I don't want the life that they're leading. Yeah, it's really different when you say it out loud. But anyways, so yeah, that's where I am right now. I really wanted to share this video to encourage anyone who was out there really thinking about really wanting to transition in their life, and they're just kind of like, well, what's the first step forward, or should I not? Listen, I'm on your side. I think you should take some strategic steps to building yourself a plan. Maybe write out your 5 lessons of things that you've learned in the past, because what I'm starting to realize is that any and everything that we need to move ahead, we already have that in our own little life treasure chest, and we kind of have to just put things together and move forward. If you feel like it's too late, it's not, because if that's the case, then what the hell am I doing? And I'm just gonna keep going. But for anyone who just doesn't want their first so many years to look like their next so many years, I'm really here to just let you know that you can do it if you put one foot in front of the other, make a plan for yourself, and move forward. So let me know in the comment section, what's one life lesson that you really stick to and it has really changed everything for you in your life? Thank you so much for joining my video. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Peace.